Welcome to the show that teaches you the things your parents and teachers are too afraid to. The Helios blog. Today, heated debate on Piers Morgan, some crazy stuff about Donald Trump. Who else? Let's get into it.
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
Presidential election. The grave new threat to the Republic is apparently weirdness. And Democrats are extremely eager for you to know that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are weird.
He and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
These guys are just weird. That's where they are.
As weird and creepy as J.D. Vance. Super weird.
I see what's happening here. This is what girls do. This is their way of getting the girls' vote. That's how girls talk about guys that they don't like. So this is what's the word? It's a dog whistle. It's like basically then they're subcommunicating to all the girls in the audience. So Kamala's trying to get the women's vote. So it's exactly Hillary Clinton 2.0, the Hillary Clinton strategy. So whoever's the political strategist here, like, I don't know what to tell you. That's a losing strategy.
Idea from J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's quite weird. They're just plain weird.
Just plain weird. Just plain weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird, and then they start being weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Being a really weird.
He's such a weirdo.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate are weird.
Well, CNN and MSNBC reportedly used the word weird to describe J.D. Vance 150 times in 2 days this weekend, which is about the frequency with which they used to say Biden is, quotes, sharp as a tack. On the one hand, this is a victory for the Trump campaign. It's a tacit admission that Project Fear has failed. The dire warnings about Trump's existential threat may have excited Biden loyalists, but the American people weren't really having it. In fact, a recent poll of crucial swing state voters found that more people trusted Trump to defend democracy than President Biden. But the dramatic change in messaging represents a much bigger problem for Republicans. It shows that Democrats have pivoted their focus from whining to winning, and smearing both Trump and his supporters as grubby weirdos is the new coordinated line of attack.
Indeed.
Us MAGA Republicans banned abortion, but that's just the start.
That's just the start. If Trump gets elected, we want the government involved in all aspects of your sex life.
Way more involved.
Way more involved.
When you have sexual intercourse, it should be illegal to use contraception. No pills, no condoms.
Your genitals are reserved for procreation.
If you freeze 12 eggs, you should be required to have 12 babies, or else you're a serial killer. And I'm definitely not a serial killer.
Yeah. It's literally, you see, I was right. It's a dog whistle. It's exactly, they're calling Trump supporters I*CELS. I'm not allowed to say it. I'll get demonetized. But you get what I'm saying? It's like anti-RP. This is exactly what they said against the RP. It's literally. It's kind of amazing, actually. Like, the RP is in the mainstream. This is straight up anti-RP messaging. Straight up. Incredible. So Rollo predicted this 20 years ago.
Are you?
Amazing.
Well, the problem with Democrats on this point in particular is that they can be pretty weird themselves, not least in that video montage we just watched. But also as...
Yeah. Again, it's not going to work because men... You alienate all men by doing this. It's like the Gillette commercial. They're trying to get the women's vote by alienating men. But there's women that are turned off by that because they love their men. And men hate that. So you've already lost the debate. You've already lost the election by taking this strategy. You can't alienate all men and expect good results out of that. It's not going to happen. It's very stupid strategy. Very stupid indeed.
Evidence by Harris supporters at campaign events so far this week.
You don't mess with childless cat ladies.
Good evening, folks. My name is Charlotte Clymer. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a writer and activist, and I am so excited to be part of this historic gathering of women across the country.
Amplify the voices of those who have been historically marginalized and use the privilege you have in order to push for systemic change.
You see?
As white people, we have a lot.
I was so right. I was dead right. No. This is... Actually, it's funny. It's landed on my area of expertise. Yeah. So this is 100%. It's destroy all men, women vote for me. It's literally wokies versus non-wokies. Straight up. If you vote for Kamala, you're asking for your country to become like this video here. 100%. You're asking for it.
To learn and unlearn. So do check your blind spots. You are responsible for your algorithm, believe it or not.
I stood over my kid's bed and I wept. I wept because I felt like I let them down. I wept because they had the chance and we had the chance to have a female president for the first time in our lives. And
I'm with her. Again. So Trump is gonna win twice with the same message. People are not gonna vote for her. Sorry. You're alienating men, I'm telling you. Only the biggest losers. Only the most loser men could possibly vote for Kamala after this. No way. You see a ad like that and you think, that's what they think of me? I'm out.
In the history of this nation.
Freaking disaster.
All very normal people doing and saying very normal things. To coin a phrase, there are very weird people on both sides. The more important point is that we now have a race with very clearly defined parameters. There are now two candidates who seem likely to survive until November, and they both have very different visions for the future of the country.
Indeed.
The speed with which the media and the Democratic establishment has thrown its weight behind Kamala Harris is, of course, cynical and pretty nauseating, especially as we know that Biden only clung on for so long because he personally doubted that Kamala could win. I understand the anger in conservative quarters, how quickly the calamities and cover-up have been forgotten, but the fact is that Kamala Harris is the candidate and the polls are narrowing fast. If Republicans want to regain their advantage, they've got to flip the script again. Less whining and more winning. Well, joining me now is the co-founder of Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, from the Red-Headed Libertarian, Josie Glayback, streamer Destiny, and from the Officer Tatum podcast, Brandon Tatum. Welcome to all of you. Cenk Uygur, this whole thing about weirdness, are Democrats in a great place to lecture people about being weird, given how weird so many Democrats are?
Yes, they are. First of all, the people that you showed in the weird montage for Democrats is someone dressed up, someone who's transgender, and someone who cries too much. Okay, it's not my cup of tea, but I'm not offended by it, and it's most importantly not policy. On the other hand, when J.D. Vance says that people who have more kids should be able to vote more, and he constantly attacks people without children, look, you can call it weird, you can call it anything you like, but it is way outside the bounds of normal policy matters, and it gets into controlling our lives from the guys who pretended that they were against big...
Wait. That's the tact you're choosing to take? Controlling our lives? Do you know what wokeism is, idiot? It's policing your language so that you literally can't say anything you want to say without getting fired. What do you mean, control? What do you mean? What? How dare you take that tact? You disrespectful piece of garbage.
Government.
Josie Glayback, is this J.D. Vance comment about the childless, cat-loving ladies of America, is that going to turn out to be a massive millstone? And will it make Donald Trump regret choosing him as his VP?
No, I don't think so. I think that these ladies are really leaning into their childless cat owning persona and just owning it. And I can think of more offensive things that have been said about women than owning cats and being childless. So I don't think it's going to hang around. I think it's kind of low hanging fruit, and I think that they're going to move on pretty soon.
But it kind of plays into this narrative of Democrats, I think, are rather successfully pushing out there now, that the Republican ticket has Donald Trump, whose history with women is not great, to put it mildly, and you've now got J.D. Vance, whose comments about women are not great, to put it mildly, and they're going to package it all up as a war on women, using, I suspect, abortion as one of the central weapons to do that. And there are going to be a lot of women in America going, I'm childless, I don't have a cat, I don't like being talked about in this derogatory manner.
I'm telling you that only the biggest loser men are going to vote for a strategy that alienates men and hates on them and treats them like those videos showed. I'm telling you, that's not going to go over well.
They may not want government to interfere with their bodies and so on. Are you not worried that this is going to be a big problem come November?
I don't think so. So abortion was never banned. What they did, they returned it to the states, which is the way that it should have been the whole time. Roe v. Wade was legislated. Roe v. Wade was legislated from the bench, which is unconstitutional. So what Dobbs did is it just handed it back to the states, and it told Congress, if you can write a law, then we'll legislate this law. Or if you can legislate this law, then we're going to rule on this law and tell you if this law is constitutional. So they handed it back to Congress, handed it back to the states. Congress tried to pass a law to codify abortion, and it failed. So it's still in the hands of Congress. If they want to write a law to codify abortion, then they can, but they haven't successfully done that yet. So until they do, it's back in the hands of the states.
Okay,
yeah,
Destiny.
But they haven't successfully done that because Republicans have blocked it.
What they had tried to do.
The Republicans are the ones that want to ban abortion. Why don't you be honest about it? Why don't you be honest about it? You want to ban abortion. You want to take away women's rights.
Why don't you be honest about it? Republicans are not banning abortions. That's not a fact. Abortions.
They are in red states.
First of all, Donald Trump.
That's a 100% fact.
Donald J. Trump at his rally, which ticked me off because I want abortions to be banned. But Donald Trump said he's okay with abortion pills sent through mail. That's 2/3 of all abortions are done through abortion pills. He said it was fine. The Supreme Court ruled that was fine. Donald Trump said he's okay with abortion up to 15 weeks. Where on the platform of the Republican Party do you see Republicans banning abortions?
There's literally, Georgia has an abortion ban at 6 weeks. The idea that somebody be okay with something in the mail is not relevant.
Let me bring in. Hang on. Don't talk over each other, please. Hang on. Let me bring in Destiny to respond to that question.
Yeah, the president signaling that he might be okay with a thing at this point is irrelevant. Roe v. Wade was overturned. The idea that this court cares about legislating from the bench when they've granted the president criminal immunity, which is something that is completely unfounded in any part historically of our legislative tradition, of our judicial tradition, or in the Constitution. The idea that the president might signal that he's okay with abortion pills sent through the mail doesn't matter if a state now has the ability to heavily restrict or outright ban abortion. And this idea that Republicans don't want to ban abortion, that's
the people
I don't
have
even
the
know
right
who
to
you're
vote.
talking to right now. That's great. But what Jenk said was absolutely correct. What Jenk said was correct. If you go and look at the restrictive abortion laws that exist throughout the country right now, they are far more restrictive in Republican states. And some of them, you might be pregnant, you're not even going to know. And by the time you realize you're pregnant, it's already banned for you to get an abortion.
We live in a republic.
This is why J.D. Vance was talking about the people without children.
Let me just play a clip. I want to play a clip because we talked about Supreme Court and reverting rights to states and so on. Let's play a clip. This is from Joe Biden's speech after 60 years of a civil rights bill. It was a bit rambling. I listened to it. It didn't make sense, a lot of it. It was a typical, I'm afraid, rather sad delivery by the president. But he made this point about the Supreme Court.
And most recently and most shockingly, the Supreme Court established in Trump versus the United States a dangerous precedent. They ruled, as you know, that the President of the United States has immunity for potential crimes he may have committed while in office. Immunity. This nation was founded on the principle there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law.
So, Cenk, I mean, what he was trying to say, and you also have to try and interpret it, but Joe Biden he's not going to get this through, obviously, before the election. But what he's trying to do is get rid of this idea of presidents having immunity for crimes committed while in office. He wants term limits for Supreme Court justices that many people think would politicize it, because it would give people an incentive to behave in a certain way, which may then help, for example, them having a future presidential run or some sort of business plan, whatever it may be. He also wants a binding code of conduct for the High Court. What do you think of these reforms? Are you in favour? Are you in favour of some of them, against others?
Yeah, so look, I think the Supreme Court is one of the most corrupt institutions in America. I wrote a whole book about it called Justice is Coming, and how they actually wound up perverting both the Republican and the Democratic parties because they allowed infinite money in politics. And it was a scheme to allow corporations to basically buy our government, and that's what they've executed. So I loathe what the Supreme Court has done. They've institutionalized corruption. Having said that, there are some solutions that make sense and some that don't. So I don't believe in packing the courts. I think that was a very bad idea by Pete Buttigieg. I think term limits is interesting, and I think that maybe the right wing might agree to it if we had more.
What did he say? The right wing? Man, this freaking guy. No, I'm done. Like, highly disrespectful.
Liberals on the court, now that they have more conservatives.
You see, he said liberal and right wing. That was done on purpose.
Of course, they won't be principled and will never agree to it. Ethics code should be basic. We should all agree to that. They're taking these fabulous vacations and getting basically millions of dollars in value from incredibly rich people who run corporations, and then they rule in favor of those corporations. It's just about as corrupt as it could possibly be.
Yep, that's true.
All right, Officer Tatum, the problem looking at it from the outside is that when you have, as Donald Trump found in his last term of office, the ability to pack the court with 3 of your own in one term, it does lead to an imbalance which you would be crying foul about if it was the other way around. What is the answer to that?
No, I wouldn't be foul. I wouldn't be crying foul about it if the other way was around. I mean, if the roles were reversed, because I understand the process and I understand the way the government works. If there's a Republican in office and the seats are open, the Republican can get someone into that position. And if the Democrats can do the same thing. If somehow Clarence Thomas is timed out when there's a Democrat in office, they're going to put a Democrat in his place. And if somehow someone else dies that's a Republican on the Supreme Court, they're going to put another Democrat in. That'll be 2 Democrats on the Supreme Court. It's just so happened to be timing. And that's why presidential elections are so important, and that's why they're so consequential. I think that the crazy thing is that out of one side of the mouth, the left cry that the Supreme Court is doing the right thing by blocking all of Trump's advances that the election was stolen. But now all of a sudden they're ruling in his favor. Make your mind up. If they're supporting Trump, then they would have allowed the election interference, election fraud cases to go straight through. They would have ruled on it in Trump's favor, but they didn't. They didn't even look at it. So I think the Supreme Court is balanced and is fair. They just don't like the fact that people are leaning more conservative. I don't like everything the Supreme Court does, but it's fair and balanced and co-equal branches of the government.
Should there be
if you want term limits, well, if we're going to do term limits for Supreme Court, let's do term limits in the House and Senate, and I'll be totally okay with that.
Okay, Destiny, what's your view of this?
Yeah, so firstly, the idea that if you're a Democratic president and you get to nominate and have a Democratic Supreme Court justice, that's an interesting concept in theory. But I seem to remember that Obama had spent almost a year with a vacancy on the Supreme Court that McConnell explicitly said he was going to deny a hearing for, which was insane. The Democrats were robbed of a Supreme Court seating there. And who's to say if Republicans would ever seat a Supreme Court justice? Maybe next time it'll be 2 years before an election. And they're saying, well, maybe we should wait for the next election cycle. You have to keep in mind that when the court was created, the reason why there are lifetime appointments is because justices, Supreme Court justices, are supposed to be insulated from the political pressures relating to running again for office and all of the other things that go into having to keep in mind like an election season. However, all of that, as Cenk rightly pointed out, is completely destroyed if you are taking bribes or getting paid or getting some kind of compensation based perhaps on the way that you might rule in the court. So an ethics guideline, I don't know how anybody could be opposed to to that. And the nice thing about term limits are people focus on term limits as like term limiting a person, which is fine, whatever. The nice thing about term limits isn't necessarily the term limit. It's that you could apportion so that every single president gets either 1 or 1.5 picks, depending upon what you actually put that term limit as, which I think everybody would agree would probably be fair. If every president was guaranteed the same number of Supreme Court picks, it means that the composition of the Supreme Court would roughly align with how Americans are voting for president, rather than this idea that, hey, maybe you'll get really lucky in one president. You know, if Trump were to win again, if Sotomayor were to, God forbid, die or step down, maybe Trump, one president, gets 4 Supreme Court picks, which is insane.
It's just,
I think, Josie, the reality is, well, hang on, Josie, the reality is, isn't it, that had it been the other way around, had Joe Biden been able to pack the Supreme Court with 3 very progressive judges, I think Republicans would have gone completely nuts. And there's the problem, is that it doesn't really matter which side is doing it. If you have the ability in one 4-year term to have that kind of significant sea change in the makeup of the Supreme Court, doesn't it lose its ability to be impartial?
Well, we had a liberal leading Supreme Court for 60 years. And now it's the first time where it switched and it's starting to lean conservative again for the first time in a long time. Now, if you want to add term limits to the Supreme Court, that would require a constitutional amendment of Article 3. And that would mean 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the states would have to agree to term limits on the Supreme Court. So that's just not something you can wave a wand and do. Also, it'd be unconstitutional to punish a president for performing his enumerated and implied powers. And SCOTUS, when they had said that they weren't going to criminalize this, SCOTUS had asked the lower courts to determine that scope, but no one's really talking about that part. It was SCOTUS had sent it back to the lower courts. They didn't just rule on it blindly.
That is completely and totally not true. This is misrepresented by conservatives so much, okay? So there were 4 different actions that the court spoke about. Roberts ruled one of them is qualifying for absolute immunity, this first bucket of things that he's created, by the way. None of these things have existed historically. There are other things now. All of the other acts are presumed immune, meaning that the state, or the government in this case, has to bring a reason why they should be able to probe these actions in a way that will never damage the executive's ability to operate in the future, which encompasses all of the other actions that are spoken about in the Supreme Court case. The reason why they remanded some of that to the lower court was for the lower courts to now have that argument over the presumptive immunity. Criminal immunity has never existed in any size, shape, or form for any politician in this country in the history of the United States. And the idea that a U.S. president, that we came from a rebellion against a king, that our president is now criminally immune for performing his duties, why would we ever assume that he needs that type of immunity?
That's not true.
It's true.
When was the president immune for criminal immunity?
There's a process for
I don't even know. Wait, when was the president immune from criminal immunity? What?
There's a process for when a president commits a crime, and that process is outlined in Article 1. It's
I'm sorry,
to impeach
what
him.
is that process?
Look.
Hold on. No. Impeachment has nothing to do with criminal liability.
So when a criminal, so when a president,
with all due respect, you have no idea what the structure of our government is. I'm so sorry. Okay, impeachment is a political process that you use to unseat somebody, and once they're unseated, you can prevent them from holding future office. If you listen to Benjamin Franklin, for instance, talk about impeachment, impeachment was created so that you didn't have to either assassinate or fabricate criminal charges to remove somebody from office. Impeachment has nothing to do with criminal liability. The maximum conviction sentence you can get for being impeached is just being removed from office and prevented from taking seat in future office. That's it.
No, it's not.
All right. Let me just, I just want to move on. I want to move.
Destiny's expression. No, it's not. That's an argument.
Let me discuss that at length. I want to move on to Trump's latest interview with Laura Ingraham at Fox News, in which he said this about Kamala Harris.
She got rid of the laugh. I noticed I haven't seen that crazy laugh that she got. She's crazy. That laugh, that's the laugh of a crazy person. But I noticed that she's not using that laugh anymore. Somebody convinced her, don't laugh, just don't laugh. Don't laugh under any circumstances because
I like laughter, but sometimes.
Not her laughter.
Now, Tatum, what do you make of that? I mean, Kamala Harris does have a weird laugh, there's no doubt about it. She's labeling Trump and J.D. Vance as a bunch of weirdos too. Everyone's calling each other crazy, weird, whatever. What they're not debating, it seems to me much, is policy. Why has it descended into kind of just pathetic name-calling?
Yeah, I think, I don't like when...
That's what the American public wants to see. Reality
politicians
TV?
do this because it's pointless for the American people. Like in a conversation where Donald Trump may want to interject that, that's fine. But like you said, it does nothing for the political conversation. No one, now I'll say this, I'm not gonna say no one cares because I think it's a negative that Kamala Harris does have a weird laugh. I think it does turn people off to her. But I think it has zero value in a person going to the grocery store and trying to figure out how they're gonna pay their bills. So Donald Trump mentioning that is completely pointless. And I think it doesn't add any value. But I didn't listen to the full conversation, and I don't know if it was just a side note that he interjected. But I think the conversation needs to be focused more on policy and how we're going to turn around America and make it better for everybody that live here.
Okay, and check on this separate rising thing about white dudes backing Kamala Harris. Do you feel entirely comfortable with this? We've actually got the actual dude saying it. Let's take a listen to him.
I am not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude. So that's what you call me.
I was brought to the party not so much as being white, and I certainly am, but because I'm a dude, you know. So a friend sent me this email today with your hat on there, and I said, oh, I gotta have one of those. I qualify, man. I'm white, I'm a dude, and I'm for Harris.
Check this white dude thing. Are you...
Freaking disaster.
Do you feel comfortable with this?
No, I don't think it's good politics. And I don't think it's necessary at all. So let's stop playing identity politics. So Kamala Harris and the Democrats don't...
Wait. A guy on the left is saying to stop playing identity politics. What is this world? What is this world that we're living in? My lord, this is actually crazy. Whew, baby. Okay. Let's end the video there. Yeah, if Kamala gets in power, good luck, everybody. It's the après-moi le déluge, you know, what Louis XIV said? Yeah. Yeah, good luck. Anyway, hit the like, hit the sub, hit all for notifications. Go buy my books like Hunter M, Adrian R, Tom and Bobby, Dylan, Renaissance Press, Brian, Andrew, Alan, Armani, and Nicholas. Shout out to you, most recent purchaser of both my books, Strategist Guide to Seduction and Quotes to Live By. Want coaching? Well, message me at theheliosblog@gmail.com. I'll slot you right in. And I do offer early access content on my Patreon. Thank you so much for listening, guys, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.